Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
If there's been one government initiative in the last few years that has been as path-breaking, as polarizing, it is Aadhaar. That's exactly what we're going to talk about today in this episode, in this edition of Softcover, which is the Prince platform to launch non-fiction books online. And today I'm launching a very, very special book. This is a book by Mr. Ram Sevak Sharma, who everybody knows is the chairperson of TRAI. But most importantly, he was the first Director General of UIDAI and actually helped build Aadhaar. So let's first release his book, and then we can talk to him. We have him with us. The Making of Aadhaar, world's largest identity project. It's a Rupa Books publication. And it's absolutely my honor to launch this book as it's a serendipity. And that's a word, sir, you've used in your book as well, because I've known Mr. Sharma for many years. We go back a few years. Anything that I know about Aadhaar, I've learned through him about using technology. So congratulations, sir. It's a very, very insightful book. I, of course, have lapped it up. And I would urge our viewers to pick up a copy as soon as possible or order it online. We'll send you the link to do that. So, sir, I want to ask you something first. So, you've been a bureaucrat. You're still serving as a chairperson of TRAI. You saw Aadhaar's birth. You saw Aadhaar's growth. You know so much. How difficult was it for you to write the book and decide what to tell and what to pull back?
Thank you, Ruhi, for having me in this conversation. I think the first question which you have asked is extremely important one, because there are 2-3 reasons, why it was so difficult to write. One is that I am not a professional writer. I am a bureaucrat, and that too with a science background, with a mathematics background to be precise. And therefore, for us, precision is very important, and writing requires a kind of flavor, play with the words, and I'm not very good at it. So that's one challenge which I had. The second one is that, there are too many facts when you are actually implementing and doing a project. There are too many things which get done, too many things which are routine, too many things which are interesting. And in the crowd of these facts, it's very difficult to actually choose the one which you should write about and discard the ones which you should not write about. So that is a second difficulty which you have in picking up when you have abundance of facts and materials, and you have to confine yourself to 100 or 200 pages. Then it becomes difficult.
Right.
And third, I think the difficulty is that when you are involved in something, then it's very difficult for you to remain objective. You become quite engrossed in that, and objectivity sometimes get lost, and to sort of keep that objectivity is a bit of a difficult thing. So many people have written about Aadhaar, and they have written excellent books and excellent things, but for me to write was a bit of a challenge. So these are 3 things which I would like to put before you.
Right. In the book, you've mentioned that this is not an attempt to defend Aadhaar.
Yeah.
So what was the thinking about writing the book? Was it to clarify what Aadhaar is, to talk about its journey?
I think that's also an excellent question. In fact, what was the need to write this book, put it this way? So one is that let me just say that when Nandan was writing the book Rebooting India, so I was actually waiting for that book to arrive, and I thought this book was largely about Aadhaar because his co-author Viral Shah was actually working as a volunteer in Aadhaar. So I thought it would be a book about Aadhaar. So when I talked to him and I asked him, when the book came, it has devoted a chapter on Aadhaar, maybe 1 or 2 chapters on Aadhaar, but it was not having so many details. So then I felt the need, because we have done this project and we have a lot of experiences which we have learned, and I think it will be an interesting idea to share these experiences. So I just asked Nandan, and Nandan said, yeah, why don't you also write? I mean, when I said that I want to write a book, he said, yeah, please go ahead, it will be good. So that's one part. That's where this whole thought process began. And as I say, it's not, the purpose is not to defend Aadhaar. The purpose is not to do such kind of thing. Purpose is essentially to share an experience, because I think what happens is that many of the government's IT projects, they really fail. Many of them fail. Many of them succeed too. I'm not making a judgment on that, but certainly there have been a lot of failures in the IT projects. And this one succeeded, I suppose. I mean, at least I consider this, that it succeeded. So why it succeeded? I mean, what happened? What is it right that we did? So I think the whole idea is to share that experience. We have also encountered all the challenges which normal projects do encounter, challenges of, you know, software vendors not doing their right jobs, raising change requests. You know, there are internal struggles, there are organizational challenges, and all kinds of things. But essentially, and any project which will be an IT project of a large scale will face these challenges. So we just wanted to share this experience as to how we had faced, and maybe it can give some kind of pointer to those who are involved in doing similar projects to essentially, you know, face these, and maybe it could be useful in some other form also. So that is the rationale for writing the book.
Right. So, you know, you've mentioned some very interesting insights. You've given some very interesting insights, some tidbits, which for a journalist like me who's covered Aadhaar, it's extremely fascinating to read. Among them is your equation with Mr. Nandan Nilekani, who we know was, of course, the first chairperson of Aadhaar. And in the interest of full disclosure, I would like to tell our viewers, he's also a very esteemed, distinguished investor at the Print. So it's important for us to disclose that while we are talking about him. So you've mentioned how you built this rapport, you divided your responsibilities, where Mr. Nilekani was going to manage the environment, be the evangelist, and you were going to be the implementator. How difficult was it, you know, to work with someone who's not from the government, who's a lateral entrant, and you being a seasoned civil servant?
No, I think this is also an extremely important and interesting question. See, what we are used to, I joined the Indian Administrative Service at the age of 22 and a half, and now I'm going to be 65. So it has been a 42 and a half years long journey. And, you know, most of the times in the departments at the state or the central government level, we worked in ministries and departments, and the minister, you know, if you are secretary, then the minister is in charge and stuff like that. So we are used to working with politicians, with ministers. And for you know, your viewers, I worked in Jharkhand and Bihar, so I worked in some difficult you know, sort of areas. Essentially, I was also apprehensive that, you know, what will it be like working with a person who is not from the government and who doesn't have any experience of the government. Though of course he had the rank and stature of the cabinet minister. But still, he comes from a private sector. We come from two different backgrounds. Let me also, for full disclosure, tell you that I come from a very small village. I'm essentially a very rustic type of person. And of course, the people from Bangalore and Nandan, and, you know, these people are very sophisticated persons. So I was also a little apprehensive from that point of view. But, you know, when I met him and when I talked to him, and, you know, when I worked with him, it is, let me tell you that it has been a fascinating 4 years of working with Mr. Nandan Nilekani. He has been a wonderful leader. And the beginning itself, he told me, Ram Sevak, I will do the overall environmental management, evangelization, you know, sort of propagating the idea, getting their consent, and getting the overall political acceptability for this concept. And you do the project and you implement the project. I will not interfere in your work. That's also another promise he made. And I must say that, you know, he kept that promise. We have had our differences, which of course in any organization which you have, you will always find out some issues which will be there where you will not agree with each other. But then he is a great consensus builder. We were able to sort out all the differences, and we were able to work. And I must say that he gave me full freedom as a CEO to work on the project.
Right. In fact, there's something very funny you've mentioned in the book, that when you met him to discuss, you know, your role, and he said, okay, we have a deal. And you were taken aback by the use of the word deal, because in the government, deal is a dirty word, but he meant it in a different context. So can you tell us something about that?
I got a call from the cabinet secretariat that, you have been identified for a nationally important project, and would you be wanting to work with that? And I said, yes, sure, I want to come to Government of India. I was working in Jharkhand at that time, and so therefore, tell me what the project is. So they said, you come and meet Mr. Nandan Nilekani. So I talked to him, and we fixed a meeting, and we met him at Oberoi, the guest lobby or whatever you call it. So there we just sat down, and over a cup of coffee we discussed, and then he told me about the project which he was going to head, and he said that he is looking for a CEO. So he asked me, will you be able to do it? I said, yes, I'll do it. Why not? So he asked me, why did you so easily agree? And I said, sir, the point is that for me, just a change of job. I do a job there in Jharkhand, and now I'll do a job in the Government of India. But if you have left all your industry and other IT stuff, and you are joining this project as the chairperson, so I think I am inspired by what you are doing, and therefore I'll be very happy to join you. And then he suddenly said, okay, so we have a deal. So I was, not really familiar with this word, because the deal is typically, connotes a nexus between some two. So I also said, in that kind of continuity, okay, sir, we have a deal. But then I realized what he was talking about is that we agree that, he takes me as the CEO, and we are going to work on the project.
Right. So we'll talk about Aadhaar in a bit, but let's talk about your journey, which that's something, lots of things I didn't know about you, which I read only in the book. You've talked about how being at IIT, then of course managing elections in states as a bureaucrat, and then your stint abroad where you, as you mentioned, a big family stayed in a small apartment with one bathroom. How have all these experiences in your life helped you build a project like Aadhaar, which, as we've talked about, has been ambitious and something that really you don't imagine the government of India doing?
The point is that somehow I've had a fascination with technology since the beginning itself. And since the beginning itself, I got convinced that, information and communication technology can solve a lot of India's hard problems, something which Nandan also believes. And the reason is that, we have, I come from UP, Western UP, and then I worked in Bihar. And, we have been doing all these things, Prasasan Aapke Dwar, we will go to the people and then we will solve the problem. And many times I realized that this human beings or human intermediation is actually one of the big problems rather than a solution. Because you may say that somebody will go and somebody will reach the government employee or adhikari, but many times it happens that becomes a bottleneck, and that becomes a matter of harassment. Absolutely. So I have always been thinking, how can we disintermediate this relationship? How can we sort of eliminate to the extent possible? I'm not saying that eliminate completely human beings, machines and robots. We are not robots, we will do the work, but how can we minimize the discretion? How can we remove the information asymmetry between the people, between the persons who are delivering and the persons who are the beneficiaries? We call everybody beneficiary, which is also a very wrong term. What beneficiary? And beneficiary connotes a relationship of somebody who is giving and somebody who is taking. Right. We are all doing our jobs. We are not giving it to somebody. So therefore, this kind of this information asymmetry, the kind of देने वाला लेने वाला relationship, प्रजा और राजा, इस type की जो व्यवस्था है, I have always been quite allergic to this kind of thought process, and therefore I thought ki how can the technology kind of make these things easier, so that discretion goes away. And that is what I have been doing, and at one point in time I realized that people may be I may be doing something wrong because I don't have a formal education or formal this thing. I just did my master's from IIT Kanpur in mathematics, but then I thought, why don't I have a formal degree and a formal rigorous training in computer science, because that's what I've been doing. So I went to do an earned leave and go on a study leave. I took GRE, I took TOEFL, and at the age of 45, with 4 of my kids, I I landed up in United States, in California, and remained in a 700 square feet house. So I did my masters from there and came back. So and then I felt much more qualified and much more this thing. And then I think it helped me in doing Aadhaar. And Nandan later told me that he looked at my CV and said, "Who is this madcap who has gone to do his masters at the age of 45? Who does a masters at 45? With 4 kids and and being a joint secretary in Government of India, Ministry of Finance, living in Lutyens, Delhi, in Myanmar. Who goes to do a scholarship of $1,200 a month? Who goes to California?" So he was also intrigued by my CV, and I said, let's get this guy. Yeah. And I think it was helpful because many times these the people who were implementing the projects, technology fellows, they'll throw some jargon at me. तो मैं उनसे पूछता था, भाई तुमने मास्टर्स कब किया था? बोले था 20 साल पहले। तो मैंने कहा तुमने 20 साल पहले, मैं तुमसे छोटा हूँ यार, मैं तो तुमसे 5 साल पहले करके आया हूँ, तो मेरी नॉलेज तुमसे ज्यादा अपडेटेड है। You are quite old in your knowledge, so you brush up your knowledge. So that way, I think they were not able to throw jargon at me, and I think it did work to an advantage, I must say.
Okay, now we'll talk about the less happy things. Aadhaar has been extremely controversial, extremely polarizing since the beginning. In fact, when the Narendra Modi government took charge, there were no differences within the government, because in this government it functions differently, but there were so many lobbies outside, so many naysayers outside. Did it ever offend you that what you thought was a foolproof system that you had built, people were pricking holes and finding so many faults with it?
I have written in my book also the experience we have with the civil society. See, the problem is that when you already make up your mind about something, that something is bad, then howsoever convincing responses I might give you, you will always find it to be bad. You will always find out some reasons to kind of. Recently also I saw a tweet saying that what a mess Aadhaar is. I don't see why is it a mess, but anyway, people are free to express their opinions. So I was myself quite apprehensive about this issue, because I have also been working in the government, and I have interacted with all kinds of people. So I was aware that there are people who may not really like the idea. So that's the way it went. But we were, I think, what happened, this kind of opposition and this kind of criticism actually helped us in some sense. How it helped us was that we were aware that, look, this kind of criticism will come. If it comes, we should have our system, we should make our system more robust. So, for example, the privacy, privacy is one of the biggest attack against Aadhaar, which of course now has been settled by the Supreme Court. Right. But privacy was one of the issues. Initially, I'm a rustic fellow, villager who doesn't understand privacy, honestly speaking, but we did go through these debates. And what happens? There's no privacy law. Now, if there is, you see, a law is the one which sets out boundaries as to what you can do and what you cannot do. Law is essentially a prescription which tells you what is prohibited and what is allowed, right? Now, because there is no law, so therefore anything you can call it as prohibited, anything you can call it as allowed, because there's no arbitrate. I mean, law is the arbiter. There's no arbiter. So way back in May of 2010, Mr. Nandan Nilekani wrote to the then Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, saying that we will do whatever we can to ensure that the data is safe, secure, and maintains privacy. But ultimately, India does need a larger privacy law. That letter is available with me. Now, this is something which you can understand that, as long as in 2010 May, we actually had proposed a privacy law for the country. Of course, it is still in the making, but we had said so. And having said so, we became conscious of the fact that now people can beat us, because they will say, no, this is against privacy. Now, because there is nothing defined what is privacy, what are the limits of privacy, how it should be done. Anybody can, it's like a windmill, anybody can say that this is not correct, this is correct. So what we did, we actually went in designing the project from the maximum privacy we can incorporate in the design itself. So there's a concept called privacy by design. We actually took that concept and incorporated that context in the whole concept in the privacy in the project itself. And that is actually to that is the credit of Mr. Nilekani and his team largely. Because Nilekani and his team, we are all members of his team, so I also to take some credit of that. But it was to his foresightedness that he said, Ram Sevak, you may not think that privacy is a great thing, but I know how this is going to work, and therefore let us design it as incorporating the privacy. And that is the reason why the highest court of land, the Supreme Court of India, which went into the question of privacy, whether Aadhaar violates privacy or not, whether Aadhaar creates surveillance structure or not, whether Aadhaar is capable of doing profiling or not, all these questions were answered in the negative. So that has happened. I mean, it's not as if from the hindsight you can say, oh, that at that time, 2009, you were doing something and there was no concept. And still it passed the test 10 years hence, 8 years hence.
Right.
It is actually you must give credit to the designers and the people who implemented this.
Right.
But somehow people have their ideas made out and they say no, it's privacy violated. Even now after Supreme Court's decision, I see a lot of articles saying that Aadhaar is violating privacy. Now, if you don't accept Supreme Court's decision also, then what can you say?
Right. But what would you say to a critic who asks you how safe is our data? Now, I know Aadhaar data is saved in federalized databases. It's not like there is one central bank which someone can access. But not everybody understands how Aadhaar data is saved. Not everybody follows it. What do you tell people when they question you about the safety of the data?
See, one is, Ruhi, is that, one concept of safety is how much, for example, if you have a lot of stuff in your house, a lot of valuable stuff in your house, then you will obviously have to have much better security. Okay. But if you decide that I'll have a very frugal, stuff in the house, I'll not have anything which is not required in the house, then obviously the requirement of safety, security also gets reduced. I'm not saying it gets reduced, but the dimensions of safety that, there are 10 darwajas and you have to, take care of all those, that reduces. So one architecture which we followed is basically minimal data collection, number one. Number two, we also followed that when we offer the authentication services, we are not going to collect any data relating to the purpose, the place, and why you are authenticating. So whether you are doing a banking transactions or whether you are doing a mobile SIM or whether you are getting a ration from a ration shop, we are not going to know or we are not going to collect that data. So this is what we call the federated data structure. So if there is a transaction related data, that transaction related data will remain with the entity. So if it's a banking transaction related data, it should remain with the bank. If it is a PDS related data, it should remain with the Food and Civil Supplies Department. If it is a data relating to some other activity, it should remain with them. So one is that we will not collect any transaction data. So Aadhaar has no transaction data. Now, what is the data Aadhaar has? Aadhaar has the data of Aadhaar holders. And what is that data? That data is name, gender, date of birth or the age, and the communication address, which is of course changeable. And the most important data is the 2 iris scans and 10 fingerprint images, right? This is the only data which Aadhaar has got. Now let's talk about this data. Some data is of course demographic data, which is the name and address and the gender, and the other is a biometric data. Now biometric data is the most sensitive data.
Right.
So couple of principles which we adopted was minimal data. There should be why did we collect biometric? Biometric was not collected as a fad that we want to have biometrics of everybody. Biometrics was collected because without biometrics we could not ensure uniqueness. If you remember, the name of the authority is Unique Identification Authority of India. Now whether the authority is unique or identification is unique, we don't know as yet. I have not been able to figure out. But the point is that because uniqueness was so much stressed upon, and the only way to get uniqueness was to have biometric data. Now we could have had 10 fingerprints, but 10 fingerprints alone would have given only uniqueness of 95%. And 5% of 120 crores is 6 crores. 6 crore guys would have been running around with 2 Aadhars or 3 Aadhars and n number of Aadhars. This also would have defeated the purpose. So therefore, to independent biometrics, which is the iris images and the fingerprints, these two were required to ensure uniqueness. So this is the reason for uniqueness. Obviously, communication address was required because we have to communicate the Aadhaar number to that person. The gender and name and photograph is required because of, ultimately it has to come on a paper whose Aadhaar it is. So basic essential information was collected. Now, how do we keep that information? One is that the information is always kept encrypted. So an encryption is a 2048-bit encryption, which is the highest level of encryption. Now, what happens is, even if the guy who is taking your, enrolling you, even that guy, if he throws away or takes away the laptop, he can't do anything because it's already encrypted. So at every stage, at no stage, data is kept unencrypted, even in the let's say the vault of the UIDAI, the data center of UIDAI. That's number one. Number two, the biometric service providers also have no access to they have access to the raw data, but they do not know whose data it is.
Right.
So there is a disintermediation done by putting a number, some random number, and therefore they have access only to that number and has no relationship as to whose data it is. Thirdly, the authentication which takes place. Authentication does not take place from raw image to raw image. Authentication takes place on minutiae to minutiae. And minutiae is like an extraction of basic, important factor from that, data. It can be compared with a cartoon of a person. When you make a cartoon of a person, from a cartoon, from a person you can go to the cartoon, but from a cartoon you can't go back to the person. You can't actually make the person's image. This is like minutiae is like that. It's like basic features of the fingers or basic feature of the iris, and the matching is done on a minutiae basis. So the data is not exposed at the time of authentication. So actually that data is very much kept offline.
Right.
So it is as secure as anything offline, and then you of course have a lot of security. It's a national importance, infrastructure of importance, and it is being guarded by the highest level of security. So I mean, till 10 years from now, 10 years, we issued the first Aadhaar number on 29th of September 2010. It's just about 10 years. In fact, the month of September is also. Then not even a single biometric data has been leaked from Aadhaar facility. That is a testament to the fact that how safe the data is.
Now, sir, there's another very interesting thing you talk about in your book. It's about how it was decided what the identity will be. Just a random number, you say. What was the debate around that? What were the options, and how did you zero in on it being just a random number?
See, this is also one of the things. Typically, what happens when you have a car, in Delhi car, you have DL03C, whatever. So, and if I have a car in UP, I'll say UP16, this is the number, right? So basically, looking at the car number, you can figure out which state the car belongs to. So this is something which is typically the numbering scheme. Every numbering scheme thus far has intelligence. Now the question is, what is the logic of the intelligence? The logic of the intelligence is that by looking at the things, you should be able to figure out something about that thing, right? We said, no, look, if that information is available on the cloud, available, connected all the time, do you really need any intelligence in that number? You don't. Intelligence is dangerous in some sense because intelligence gives you a little bit of profiling. You can know, suppose my Aadhaar number was UP something, they will know Mr. Sharma is from Uttar Pradesh. Now, we wanted to specifically avoid profiling. We said nothing should be disclosed by that number. So therefore, we said the only way we can do it, having a random number. So this number does not tell you about whether you are a male or a female or a young or old or whatever, which place you belong to. So that in fact, minimum information, I must give you one example. This example was that people typically have, your permanent address and communication address.
Right.
Temporary and permanent. And we were saying, what is the use of permanent address? So let's remove the we began with the zero information, and then we said which information is essential. So for example, place of birth. There's always typically in all the forms you will find place of birth. People said place of birth could be Pakistan, for example. Some people, and you can profile them. So why should we have place of birth also? So let us remove that also. So essentially we went in for, so similar was the logic behind the random number. So one is random number. We should not be, nothing should be disclosed by that number. And secondly, we went that, okay, if you have an alphanumeric number, it's a problem because the digits are the best way to do it. We went in for a 12 digit, 11 digits are the real significant digits. And the number can be, in fact, there's a white paper as to the numbering scheme of Aadhaar, which was written by a professor of MIT, Mr. Sharma. So that basically how this thing should be done. And actually we can accommodate 100 billion numbers because 2 to the power 11 is the number 100 billion. So actually we can provide a unique identity to every citizen in the world because the world population is just about 7 and 8 billion.
Right.
So the density of the numbers on that number line from 0 to 100 billion is just about 1% because we have used about 1.22 billion.
Right.
So I think there's a huge logic, and that logic I can explain on and on. And in fact, there's a whole chapter devoted in my book on that subject as to why we went in for a random number.
Right. Okay. Now, before closing, I'll ask you one last question, and this is a bit of a tricky question. How would you compare the approaches of the UPA government and the NDA government towards Aadhaar? UPA government brought it in as a baby, and the perception is that somewhere down the line they did abandon the project. It was this government that pushed it, that adopted it, and which is why it has become what it has. So how would you compare these two approaches?
Look, I am a bureaucrat. I'm not really
exactly why I said it's a tricky
politician. But I must only say that the present government actually has especially the Prime Minister has really kind of given such an acceleration, such a push. He has not only revived this project, he has revived it with huge amount of support and gusto, and he has leveraged this project, made an integral part of Digital India. So I think this project has really delivered, so to say, the intended benefits. And I must also say that the benefits are yet to come, honestly. Aadhaar identity is the most important thing. Recently, I don't know whether you've seen an article of Economist or not. There's an article in the recent issue of Economist which actually says that it is ironical that the Britain and America don't have a digital identity, and a massive country like India has a digital identity where you are putting money into people's account directly and people are getting the money. So I think the present government has been really it has used Aadhaar in the direct benefit transfers. It is being done now in the payment space, in other spaces. I am a little I want the Aadhaar could be used more frequently by private sector, because what is happening is that the Supreme Court's judgment somehow limited its use to the Sarkari sector, which I think has become a little bit of a dampener, because I think private sector has it improves the reliability of various systems, because ultimately if you have trust in identity, then many problems get solved of the fake identity of the ghosts and duplicates and all kinds of things. So it will be extremely beneficial. As such, as Dalberg has done a study how much money it has saved. The finance minister, late Sri Arun Jaitley, made a statement in parliament how much money, 90,000 crores Aadhaar has saved. So I mean, there's no doubt. And I think the present government has really done a great sort of acceleration for this project.
So, sir, it has now, there are over 1 billion people enrolled. It is the world's largest identity platform, as your book also says. If you had to describe Aadhaar and its journey in one line, how would you describe it? I'm also hoping to get my headline of the interview through this.
Really, it's very difficult. It's actually a very fundamental and transformative idea. Let me say this. Aadhaar is people did not realize how critical identity is, and identity not being looked into a normal socio-political sense,
Hmm.
but identity in this, digital identity in this today's world, it's actually very, very phenomenal. And digital identity was not as relevant at any point in time in history as it is now. And it's truly a transformational idea, and an idea whose time has come, an idea on which we can build a huge amount of products. The whole so-called India stack has been built around it. The presence-less, cashless, paperless governance is riding on it. So I think Aadhaar is one of the most transformative, project or thing which has come out to be. In fact, we ourselves did not have as much idea when we were doing that project. We were actually focusing on service delivery in the government sector, like payment banking and like PDS, other kinds of things. But now it has flowered into a wonderful sort of idea, almost applicable in many sectors. Telecom, SIMs you can get ration, you can get payments in your account, you can open bank account, you have the JAM, Janadhan Aadhaar and Mobile Trinity, and a whole lot of things have happened. And I think one chapter of my book describes that part also.
Right. Well, sir, as always, this has been a fascinating conversation. I always say this, I learn a lot from you. Once again, for our viewers, The Making of Aadhaar, a book by Mr. Ram Sevak Sharma. Do pick up your copy. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us on Softcover. All the best for your book, and we're looking forward to the next one.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, Ruhi.
Thank you.
Take care.